of what has to be done.
Okay, I have a lot of questions in the collegium, but since you mentioned the case, the petition that was about the delay in the appointment of judges, now you said something very cryptic in court. This matter was to be brought before you on a particular Tuesday, I think it was, and suddenly it was deleted from the list. Prashant Bhushan was one of the advocates in the case, and he brought to your attention in open court, which is how we all know about it, that this is mysteriously gone. And you said that some things are best left unsaid. Now, I assume that you had to leave them unsaid when you were on the bench. Today, you're a free man. What did you leave unsaid there?
So let's understand the court works on a master of the roster principle. It has worked so far. Ultimately, it's the chief's call what matter should be heard by whom. It was listed before my court because I was party to the original judgment with Justice Bobde and Justice Suryakant. We were 3 judges. So somebody must have marked the case to me. That is why I took up the case. It's not that I took up the case myself. And the application in this behalf was a contempt petition. We only issued notice, not on the contempt petition, despite a lot of insistence from the petitioners, but to see that the movement was there. And the Attorney General used to regularly appear. And when the matter was taken up, there were movements. There were appointments. So I felt the Attorney General was, he said so, and he was doing a task to see that these difficulties are ironed out. I was towards the end of the tenure. Yes, it could have been listed before me for once. Ultimately, it would have gone beyond that tenure to somebody else. I believe somebody else will take it up. Nobody is indispensable in the system, and somebody who would be entitled to hear the case on the basis of the roster and the judgment passed, because there are certain norms, would try to see that the difficulties which have arisen are ironed out. I mean, see, what troubled me was the fact that, say, 13 cases are pending of judges whose recommendation is first time sent and not gone back with any objection. Reiterated cases which you talked about are pending for them. Transfer 6 cases are pending for transfers, which I think the government has very limited role. Chief Justice's appointment, 3 of them were recommended but are still pending. So I was hoping that by the next date, the attorney would be able to get some movement on it, and more movement would come at a later date. But be that as it may, I'm still hopeful that there would be a movement.
You know, you're still being very I don't know if the word is diplomatic, so let me push you just a little bit further. The roster, who gets what case, is a very fiercely debated thing, not just in legal circles, but also in political circles. More recently, for example, you had a lawyer and a congressman like Abhishek Singhvi argue about why a certain case went before a certain judge. I think the judge mentioned was Justice Bela Trivedi. That became a big point. You had Dushyant Dave writing off letters to the bench. This roster, who gets to hear which case, is such a deeply sort of divisive and almost political conversation. What is the appropriate response for the Chief Justice, who's the master of the roster, in such a situation?
So let's look at it. The roster system evolves in the High Court also and Supreme Court also. It's not such a problem in the High Court. The judge assigns the cases and it's done, and the Chief Justice has a role. I mean, I've been almost a little less than 4 years as a Chief Justice of 2 courts. I worked it. There was some problem which would arise, and one would try to work it out in a manner which I believe was the correct way. Similarly, for the Supreme Court. Now, let's say in the Supreme Court, we are not one court as a whole as it is. We come from different courts with different thought processes. It's not a court which sits in sync with all the judges sitting together. There are benches. So there will be different. This being the last court, it becomes a more contentious issue because a particular kind of case, a set of lawyers would not like to or like to have it before a court. But then the Chief Justice is master of the roster, the first amongst the equals. You have to trust somewhere for the matters to be tackled. And that trust has been reposed in the Chief Justice to do a particular job. And I don't believe in disruptions from within a system. I believe that we must work in an institution which is important. And the Chief and myself have had a very good working relationship over a period of time. There will always be some difference of view, but that's not material.
So it's interesting